Payday 3. Good old Payday 3. The game with 6 fans total, of which I make up 2.5. I like the game. I like it a lot. In fact, I like it more than 2. Yeah, blasphemy, whatever. While the latter obviously has it beat on content, the gunplay and balance of 3 is simply much more enjoyable to me. And I'm not here to fondle its nutsack too much. I think it still has a long way to go. But the potential to be a great game is absolutely there, and each update brings us a little bit closer to that. And with what is set to be a stacked summer for the game in regards to both content and features, the future of Payday 3 is looking a lot brighter than it ever has. But we're not here for that today. We're there to go back to the dark days. November of 2023. Payday 3 gets its first proper update, introducing the first 2 Legacy Heists to the game, essentially remakes of heists from Payday 2 to tide the fanbase over. This didn't work too well, since the game was in a much worse state at the time, and I feel the Legacy Heists are almost a worse of both worlds situation. They require no less effort than a new heist, since they're full remakes reworked to fit 3's gameplay, as opposed to simple ports. But a lot of the community saw them as low effort, meaning that the process took a lot of work for a limited return. Me, however, I like the Legacy Heist concept. I think it's a great way to back up the game's DLC with free heists for everybody. Seeing certain classic heists redone, unchained from the shackles of the diesel engine and with brand new objectives, layouts and ideas. It's cool. We don't know what Starbreeze is doing in regards to Legacy Heists. All we know is that the summer months promise one free heist that is presumably an original concept, but I would personally like to see them return at some point, and with that, these are the top 10 Legacy Heists I would love to see in Payday 3. First of all, I want to lay down a couple of ground rules. For one, I will not be considering any revival era Payday 2 heists. These are some of my favourites in the game, but are still fairly recent, and were designed with a similar philosophy to many Payday 3 heists, meaning that I feel few substantial changes would be made in the remake process. For example, Hostile Takeover in Payday 3 would probably just be Hostile Takeover with prettier graphics, and not much else, so I don't feel these heists in particular are in need of remaking so soon. 2. I am not necessarily excluding heists based on story, with one exception. Turbid Station's plot was completely rewritten for free, so any other Legacy heist could be rewritten as well. The exception is the White House. I feel this heist is too heavily tied to 2's story for the plot to be reasonably altered, and I personally like how Starbreeze have thus far tried to fit the Legacy heist into the story of 3 without stepping on the toes of 2. Any other heist I am willing to consider, with plot points altered. And 3. Crossover heists are not necessarily excluded, since Turbid Station was technically a crossover. However, crossovers that lean heavily into their source material, such as Reservoir Dogs, will not be eligible for this list. That means that the Point Break, John Wick and Hotline Miami heist packs, as well as Boiling Point from the Hardcore Henry pack, will be eligible, whilst, for example, Scarface Mansion would be excluded. And yes, it's sad to say, but this means that our beloved Goat Simulator will not be appearing on this list. It's a shocking loss, I know. With that said, let's get rambling. An oldie and a goodie. Arguably one of the most iconic heists in the Payday series, the aptly named Bank Heist, or as I like to call it, Harvest and Trustee, is Payday to a T. Get in, set up the drill, deal with the reset the drill, deal with the reset the drill, deal with fuck off, you broke dick piece of shit drill. Whew. Okay. Reset the drill, deal with the cops, get into the vault, loot the place and get out. The classic formula, refined to an art form. On top of this, for many people, it was their introduction to Payday Stealth. Granted, it was Payday 2 Stealth, the video game equivalent of dipping your balls in candle wax, but still, it was the start point for one of the most noted elements of the franchise. I would love to see how the stealth translates to Payday 3's more flexible and fun, though occasionally too easy, systems. I would particularly like to see if they alter the layout somewhat, so that either vault spawn is doable in stealth. Because in 2, if the vault spawns here, you might as well restart. Story-wise, I don't think much needs to be changed, since, as a launch Payday 2 heist, it barely has any plot. Get in, rob the place, that's your lot, sling your hook. Maybe Starbreeze would reframe it as an SCB branch, similar to how Turbid Station was reworked, but as far as I'm aware, there's nothing in the Payday lore to indicate that Harvest and Trustee went out of business or only operates in the Washington DC area, so it could very much stay as an H&T branch, with the only alterations pertaining to some billboards. However, on the topic of SCB, that brings us to the big problem with Harvest and Trustee, and it's why it's only at the number 10 spot despite its iconic status. Payday 3 currently has 12 heists, 2 of them being bank hits, and one of which, No Rest for the Wicked or the SCB heist, is very similar to Harvest and Trustee thematically. I feel that right now, given the small amount of heists in the game, it will be inadvisable to add any that feel too redundant. This is also why you won't see Nightclub, Big Bank or Art Gallery in this list, as these heists are just a little too similar in premise to heists already in 3 for me to consider them as worthwhile additions right now. I had to give Harvest and Trustee a shout out though, for its sheer influence on the series, and I may just have an idea as to how we could see it implemented without the redundancy issue. Firestarter in Payday 2 is, well, it's a bit like my baby cousin. It's a mess. More specifically, Day 1. Infamous for being technically stealthable, but not really, I would love to see it implemented in Payday 3 purely for a presumed Day 1 overhaul to make stealth actually viable. But there's a big elephant in the room here. Firestarter is a multiple day heist, a system that is currently not implemented in Payday 3, and it's barely implemented in Payday 2, with Firestarter being one of the rare exceptions, and one of the even rarer exceptions to have a whole 3 days. With the first being set at an airstrip overtaken by cartel members, the second at an FBI office, and the third being good old Harvest and Trustee with a slight difference in objectives. This would be a massively ambitious heist to implement, as even the original Firestarter reused assets for Day 3, and in this case, Starbreeze would have to create 3 separate heists from the ground up, implementing various changes to fit 3's mechanics and fit it all into a multi-day system, assuming that the mainline heist doesn't add it to the game at some point. The work required to remake Firestarter would likely not be worth it, especially given the general community's nonchalance towards the Legacy Heists in general. Perhaps even just a remake of Day 1, expanded to be more of its own thing, would be much more likely. In terms of story, Firestarter is relatively integral to the Hector betrayal subplot in 2. However, if Turbid Station can rework its plot to no longer be part of the Boiling Point plotline, then Firestarter can easily be reframed to fit a more generic cartel faction, or even tie into some grander Payday 3 story point. All in all though, the scale of this heist makes it seem to me more like my wishes of having somebody love me. Nothing more than a pipe dream. Please, 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 Starbreeze, please bring back Zelensky, Vlad. I don't know why you changed him, but it's so weird pairing his classic voice with his new tough guy mobster design. Vlad is like an insane Santa Claus, and his new design really doesn't reflect that anywhere near as well. Anyway, Mall Crasher is another classic from Payday 2. Notable for being one of the first ever Payday heists where theft was not an objective, going into a shopping mall and smashing the place to bits was our aim. Lootless heists would become something of a recurring Payday staple, as the gang took on jobs pertaining to assassination, espionage, good old-fashioned terrorism, and a little bit of saving the world. And it would be nice to see some Payday 3 heists introducing some more varied objectives. Mall Crasher is the epitome of the early limitations of Payday 2. With an inexperienced dev team and an engine named after what the creators were snorting when they made it. Everything about the heist is small and a little janky, from burning out storefronts to knocking headphones off the walls. Believe it or not, Mall Crasher technically has stealth though. Much like Firestarter Day 1, it is very clumsily handled and doesn't even provide a stealth bonus. I would love to see this heist expanded upon and polished, perhaps as an indicator of Payday 3 opening up more varied mission types. I agree with Red Archer Live and that keeping the heisting fantasy in mind and not straying too far into the superhero mass terrorist angle is a good thing for Payday 3, but I do think a couple of different objective types thrown in here and there would do a world of good. In regards to the story, this is another heist that wouldn't need much outside of a location change from DC to New York, since the story of destroying shit to extort people who owe bad money is fairly utilitarian. I won't deny that this would not be a massively exciting heist to see though, coupling its short length with middling reception in the community, so perhaps it would be better released alongside a few other smaller remakes like 4 Stores and Jewellery Store, almost like a pack of sorts. Either way, I would leap at the chance to vandalise the Pear Store once more with the power of Unreal. And here we have the heist to introduce one of the most iconic Payday characters, and, let's be honest, one of my personal favourite heists in the game. It's the one, the only, Beneath the Mountain. I adore this heist. The setting, the feel, the tone, it's exquisite. To see it in Payday 3, and to perhaps see more varied, involved objectives in regards to opening up the vault, the repetitiveness of which is one of my few problems with the original, would be a dream come true, especially if they added a stealth route. The story would also be fairly easy to alter if it was reworked from a murky water facility to, I don't know, something like a US military base. However, there are a few problems that prevent me from putting this heist at any higher point. For one, the length of the heist may present some issues with Payday 3's attrition-based gameplay. While I'm not the biggest fan of how short some of 3's heists can be, I will admit that the 10 to 15 minute lengths do suit the resource management gameplay. As seen with Cook-Off, when heists go on for much longer than 20 minutes, they can start to really strain the player as resources get low and become increasingly harder to maintain, with skills such as Clean Slate being a borderline necessity to even stand a chance of surviving. Beneath the Mountain's length and massive scale may make it very hard to properly balance for loud, without something that makes the heist so great being lost in translation. This could possibly be fixed if 3's current favour system was replaced with a more robust pre-planning menu, but we've had no word on anything pertaining to that as of yet. And to be honest, I do struggle to see ways in which the heist could be altered to be made even better, outside of adding stealth, which is the very reason why I banned Revival Era heists from the list. Regardless, I love Beneath the Mountain, and I would love to see how they tackle it, but this would be another heist that I see as fairly unlikely, and it only got this far in the list through sheer goodwill. So, a fun little fact. I was at a car dealership the other day, and it reminded me that this heist even existed. Which is odd, because it's not like I don't like Car Shop or I find it forgettable or anything. I do actually like it. The first stealth-only heist in Payday history, it makes a strong first impression, and is probably one of the most beloved stealth routes from Payday 2. Don't worry, the other most beloved stealth heist will appear later on. Car Shop is perfect in most every way for a Payday 3 remake. A heavy stealth focus to show off the greatly improved Payday 3 stealth, short enough length, relatively small and compact map size, and a very limited story that would not require much reworking to fit into Payday 3. Of course, this would mean the return of my arch nemesis, Payday driving. Let's see how they could handle it in Unreal. Possibly with a slightly more generous timer and less slippery physics, perhaps? Hell, if we were really getting ambitious here, maybe some sort of police pursuers during the escape segment to add some more excitement to a heist finale that is, well, it's more stressful than it is engaging, really. The driving is really the sticking point, though. We haven't had as much as a forklift in Payday 3 yet, and it's unclear if the dev team wishes to go with that, though the use of the shockingly fun golf carts in Texas Heat at least suggests that drivable vehicles are still on their minds. We'd have to wait and see how or if this particular sneaky classic would make its grand return. Fuck, I'm gonna have to get stealth footage for this. Kill me. This was an odd one to consider for a placement. It's a crossover literally named after the game it's crossing over with, which should theoretically put it in the same category as heists like Reservoir Dogs that lean too hard on the collaboration to be considered. However, the thing about Hotline Miami is that it has absolutely nothing to do with Hotline Miami. Jacket has no connection to the heist, the Commissar is an entirely original Payday character, and the only real element lifted from Hotline Miami are the Russian gangsters in white suits. Much like Turbid Station, it can be easy to forget that it even is a crossover, name aside, and with all that said, it's a damn fine heist. The expanded meth cooking mechanics from Cook-Off can be carried over to Day 1, and I would love to see how they handle the destruction tasks, with how surprisingly fun it is to shoot up cars in Payday 3. Day 2 brings with it a mad dash through a crumbling apartment building, which could be expanded upon to take advantage of Payday 3's advanced movement mechanics. Perhaps things like a low gap between debris that you have to slide under in order to pass? As it stands, the slide is a very situational, albeit fun mechanic, and I'd love to see more heists take advantage of it, with the movement-based objectives of Hotline Miami Day 2 being a perfect testing ground. It is, of course, another multi-day heist, which could be a problem, but I like to be an optimist. A potential solution could be to have both days listed as two separate heists, perhaps under its own campaign tab. This would be a bit of a lame and clumsy solution, admittedly, but I would personally take it in exchange for a Hotline Miami remake. The story could also be altered without much issue. It could be argued that this new commissar, blah blah blah, taking over, blah blah blah, Concord Treaty, whatever, blah blah blah, no dentist, blah blah blah. A Hotline Miami remake is possible, and I would love to see it. So let's see if a solution to the multi-day problem can't be worked out. Yes, I know Pimped Out Getaway isn't the track for this heist, shut up. It's way too good a track to be associated with Santa's workshop. As it stands, we're not too sure what Starbreeze's stance on holiday-themed heists in Payday 3 will be, outside of not getting anything for Halloween or Christmas of 2023 for obvious reasons. However, if they wanted to give us a bit of festive cheer for 2024's Christmas, I would love to see them bring back my favourite holiday map from 2 as a Legacy Heist. Stealing Christmas has a lot of the same advantages as Car Shop, but for Lloyd, being a relatively small and compact map where pretty much all of the space is used. Plus, as of episode 1 of the Dragon Files web series, we know Hayuden is still hanging around, so why not let him don the elf suit one more time? Perhaps we could even see the return of the LED mask collectibles. It'd be a good way to make use of the revamped challenge system that Starbreeze has been talking about implementing in the wake of the progression revamp, and those masks are honestly my favourite versions of the classic heister styles. However, I can understand that if they bring back holiday heists, Starbreeze may want to go down the path of an original heist for Payday 3, and even if they did add a Legacy Heist, then Santa's Workshop, for all my distaste towards it, is arguably the more iconic and interesting heist to remake. Regardless, as my favourite festive heist in Payday 2, I had to put it on this list. And here we have the other iconic Payday 2 stealth heist. I fucking hate Shadow Raid. To be honest, I've never much enjoyed Payday 2 stealth, with it often coming off as more frustrating than fun, so I don't really enjoy any stealth-only heist, even Car Shop not really being an exception, although it is relatively short and painless. But I won't deny that Shadow Raid has a strong layout and atmosphere, and I would very much look forward to seeing it reworked into Payday 3's superior stealth systems. Turbid Station and Cook-Off were odd choices for the first Legacy heists, as they were both fairly niche and middling to upper tier in the community, and like every other heist in this top 3, Shadow Raid is the one that I feel could really inspire more community excitement for the Legacy heists. A beloved, iconic heist that can only benefit from Payday 3's gameplay style. This is another heist that I feel would definitely need a better pre-planning system, even more so than Beneath the Mountain. Though the biggest hurdle in the remaking process may actually be the story. Shadow Raid is heavily, intrinsically tied to Murky Water. We aren't just raiding a nondescript facility, we're specifically stealing loot that itself has been stolen by the Murkies during overseas operations. Shadow Raid was one of the first heists to really embody the steal from the rich, give to myself mentality, and arguably the first time the crew were actively the good guys in a heist, or at least not the worst bad guys. Removing the shady PMC angle from the heist would absolutely hurt the feel, and I would prefer if it was not framed as a flashback, as I find that to be a fairly lazy and unfun way to reframe a heist. We know that Treaty has some involvement with drone warfare programs, so perhaps the easiest solution would be to make Treaty the focus. That could provide some dramatic irony, since we would theoretically be striking the same man in both versions of the heist, albeit through different companies. Story issues aside, however, which are, well, they're fairly minor in the grand scheme of things, I'd say that Shadow Raid is a must-have if Legacy Heists is to continue, and that's a statement that also applies to both of our final picks. One time my mate's dad told me that there are 3 steps to winning at the casino. You leave your credit and credit cards at home, only enter with as much money as you're willing to lose, and only play roulette. Well, as Payday has taught us, that's just wrong. The actual key to success is by robbing the place blind with a big drill. Golden Grin is one of the most grand and complex heists in Payday 2, and perhaps in the series in general. The drill requires a lot of intention to keep it running and topped up on coolant. It's a very active heist, and one of my personal favourite Lloyd jobs for the atmosphere and engaging gameplay alone, even if the loot is absolute trash. Its design also has many similarities to most Payday 3 heists, with large open areas and a tightly compacted layout. Perhaps a potential remake could give us more use to the otherwise largely aesthetic hotel area. However, there's something that holds me back from liking Golden Grin in general, and you'll all see this coming, it's the stealth. This heist is the pinnacle of Payday 2's finicky, annoying, bullshit stealth systems, and if any heist deserved Payday 3's enhanced stealth mechanics, it would be this. Just the advanced capabilities of casing mode alone would make some of these objectives so much less frustrating. Not to mention the glitzy Vegas setting of the heist, which would provide some much needed variety to the dingy East Coast locales of Payday 3. New York is an absolute cesspit, and I salute the level designers for being able to replicate it so perfectly, but by God it gets exhausting to be in such a filthy, drab city. Golden Grin's story is an odd beast, and that is both very relevant to the overall storyline of Payday 2, while also clearly not being intended as such when it was initially released. It's very clear that the dentist loot was retconned into being vital after the Kataru storyline was introduced. What this does mean, however, is that it's very easy to rewrite for Payday 3, remove any mention of the dentist and change the main loot to be literally anything else. Hell, if we wanted to get creative with the plot, the heist could be laid out as Hoxton trying to claim what is rightfully his after Concord's hitmen forced him out of the casino before he could collect his profits. All just thoughts, but regardless, I would think Golden Grin would be an essential legacy heist for Payday 3. Shacklethorne is one of the most underrated Payday 2 heists in my opinion. It came out at a time when the game's lifespan where heists were prioritising story over gameplay. The Spring Break 2018 Icebreaker and Breaking News era was a weird one, and in retrospect I would personally argue that the heists of this time were more exciting than they were fun or that great, which is where I feel the Revival era went right, toning down the scale and cult angle to focus on adding twists to more typical heist scenarios. Shacklethorne, however, is easily my favourite heist of the Kataru storyline. The atmosphere of this map is exquisite. A proud manor auction house holding all sorts of bizarre secrets. This is, in my opinion, Payday 2's more mystical elements done right, keeping them as a subtle background element as opposed to the main focus. For how Payday 3's gameplay is more toned down and Payday 1-esque, hell, I'd say that Payday 3 is a fantastic sequel to Payday 1, but stumbles more as a sequel to 2. We don't really have any more gloomy or atmospheric maps just yet. The droning music, the pouring rain that fried my friend's laptop back when we played it together, thanks Diesel Engine, It all constructs something so fascinating and eerie. The stealth can, of course, be expanded upon in Payday 3. With the ability to carry hostages around by a human shield, objectives such as the one to lure out the auctioneer can be less janky, and perhaps even have more than one solution. Maybe we could have some touch the sky-esque shenanigans involving drugging his drink and luring him to the bathroom, and with how Payday 3 handles keycards, we could grab it off him without having to lay a finger on the man. As far as Lloyd goes, as long as we don't see any circle hacks, I think it could be great. Given the game's fetish for finding new and creative ways to get into vaults, I'd love to see them polish up that aspect of the heist. The story also isn't really massively hard to alter. Again, for how relevant it is to the overall story, the heist itself and its objectives aren't too plot driven. Ultimately, Payday 3 is a game that conceptually promises a more grim atmosphere than its predecessor, and while it does achieve that in some ways, I feel like the actual tone of the game is somewhat at odds with what the story, and even some of the cutscenes, suggest. I am not saying that Payday 3 heists are devoid of atmosphere. Heists like Under the Surface, Touch the Sky, and Boys in Blue excel in building a distinct feeling and tone, but it has nothing as thick as that of Shacklethorne, or No Mercy to give another example. Tonally and even structurally, with how stealth is laid out and the abundance of choke points, it almost feels like a heist that would fit Payday 3 better than the game it's in. But why Shacklethorne? Over every other heist I've featured in this list, why this one? What makes this more deserving than Golden Grin or Hotline Miami? Well, the answer is pretty much just that I love it. I personally love Shacklethorne way more than Hotline Miami or Shadow Raid, and this isn't to put those heists down, but this one is special to me. The series as a whole is special. I love Payday, and I love Payday 3 for all of its warts. Maybe Payday isn't the most polished series out there. Maybe Starbreeze gets a little too greedy for their own good every now and then. Maybe a game like Deep Rock Galactic or Helldivers 2 makes for a better co-op shooter. But you know what? Those games don't have what Payday has. They don't revel in the tropes of classic heist and crime films. They don't have such distinctive love-to-hate enemies. They don't have the lovably evil main cast. These games don't have what I want, and Payday does. Because if I wanted the world's most polished and refined and classy shooter, I'd play Black Ops 1 or Doom 2016. I wouldn't play Ready or Not, I wouldn't play Resident Evil 5, and I wouldn't play Payday 3. Payday 3 should have been better, but I'm not going to give up on it. I made this list because I want to see the game flourishing, to be improved even further, to have so much of that love for the series history we see in the developers bursting from the seams, and, I suppose to an extent, to prove the naysayers wrong. I never said it wasn't petty. We've seen games unfuck themselves, get out of terrible positions and earn back the respect of their users. Frankly, Starbreeze has won my respect back with the sheer effort they've put in over the last 6 months, with their transparency and acknowledgement of their faults. I'm not everybody though, and it's up for the team to see it all the way through, and make Payday 3 into the ultimate heisting experience that it deserves to be. Thank you for watching to the end, and I very much hope you enjoyed my crazy ramblings about this broken, battered, beautiful little game.
Keep your masks on. This is